So good morning everyone. Welcome to our class about object-oriented programming using Java. So in this video, we will explore a few topics related to class and objects, how we can use static keywords, the access modifier including public, private, protected, and default, as well as how we can use constructor in order to initialize our variable when we create a new object. This is auto-activated when we create a new object. This is called constructor. So first we look at the class and object. It's basically as we can see from the previous video, class is a blueprint structure template that we create our component. Basically it includes data variable, functions, and constructor. Variable is used to store data. You can manipulate this data using function. Function do something on the data, right? And then when you already define the class, you can create object later on, which is called the instance of class, real item on the class. This is called object. Okay? So in the previous example, we create a program, simple program with a class name counter. Okay, we have the keyword class and then counter. We create a private variable value, and then we have several functions. Either depending on you have one function, 2, 3, 4, and 5, so on and so forth. You can also create an overloading function as well. Okay, and we also try to add a validation rule in the public function get value. Because our data was set to be private, it means that the class should not able to access our data. But we provide through a function. This function return this variable. So instead of returning directly, you can return with the validation rule. They must provide you a key, a pin code, or whatever that you want it to require, so that you only return the value if they give you the right parameter. Okay, as we can see in the previous examples. So next we take a full more look on the example of how we can create class and objects. As you can see on the left side here, we create a class called employee. So we input the public in front. It means that it's default, defined default. Can you guess how many variables that we have and how many functions that we have? You can count, right? Variables are those store the data. Okay, ID, name, salary. So we have 3 variables. So this is function insert and display function. Insert, they are used to pass some certain data, and then we set our variable to be the data that are given from the function. So ID equal A equal I, name equal N, sorry equal S. This is something passed from the parameter of this function insert. So we have another display function which takes no parameter. The goal is to display the data of this client employee. We have ID, we have name and salary. Okay, this is how we create a class. For example, you can test this class, okay, by creating a new class. Let's say test employee, as you can see on the right part here. Public static void main. So in here we create 3 objects: E1, E2, and A3. Using the way how we can create object, we call new, right? Employee is the class name that we define here. E1 new employee. Okay, take no parameter. This is called the for constructor. Okay, we take more detail in the next few slides about constructor. So we have created 3 objects, and then we insert the data into object 1, object 2, object 3 with different data that we insert into. So after we run it, we're supposed to get the data. For example, for SOC, the ID is 101, the salary for 50, for example. Okay, so we try to display different objects using the display function. For each object, it can use E1.insert, E1.display. Okay, for E2 it's the same way, because this already the template, the structure that we create in advance as a class employee. For this object, it can use those already defined here, except those are private. Okay. Another example of how we can create class, we can test our program directly inside that class. Suppose that we create a class called GFG. It contains 2 static variables, name and price here, and there are 2 functions. They are defined as static. As you can see, static void set, static void get here. This is called static functions. In the set function, it takes 2 parameters, string and float, and then it set this data into this variable. And then this display the get function display data. Okay, so we have name and so we have price. You can actually test this function and variable using the main program inside this class directly. You don't need to create an object. Okay? If you see in the previous example, in order to call to this variable as well as functions, you need to create a real item which is called object. Create object in here so that you can access those information. However, if you create only one class, you can access this data directly without creating an object. However, this data as well as the function must be declared as static. As you can see static keyword here because the main is static. It accesses directly to this variable without creating an object. So you can class name .set.get or access to any variable. Or you can just say set or get function if you know because it's the same file, right? This is how it works when you don't create an object. You can use the static keyword. But basically we don't really use this. Normally we create class and then we create another class in order to test that. So what is static keyword? It is a non-access modifier which are used for methods and attributes. Okay? Which is keyword. It is a kind of keyword that you can put into the method or attributes. Static method or attribute can be accessed without creating an object. So you don't need to create an object, but you can access those data, those methods later. Okay? For example, in here, as you can see, we have a class test static. We have two functions, static void my static and static void my public. One function is static, one function is not static, okay? Because we don't give a static keyword. And then we have the function. In order to test this one, we will create a main program. Okay, this is a typo error. It should be public static void main, lowercase. And then as you see in here, you call the static method without creating an object. Because this function is created as static, you can access it directly. However, if you create an object, okay, you can access to those functions that are not static. Okay? For example, in this case, you can call the public method. Okay? This is how it works on the set of functions. You can also use this on the variable, what we call keyword variable as static. This is called static variable. What it means that static variable, it can be used to refer to something that are the same to all objects, common property to all objects. It means that when you create an object, 5 objects, this ID name, they may contain different data based on your setting, your data set, you set certain number. However, if you set the static keyword for a piece of variable, some variables that are declared static, these can be used by all objects. All objects use the same item. They use the same item. They don't create many variables here. They just use one collect variable in case of static here. Okay? So as you can see in here, if we set data later, for example, by default we set e-commerce variable. And if you create, let's say, two object S1, S2 here, and then you display this data, you will get the ID, the name, and as well as the college of the student. However, if you change the college variable to any data by using S1 S2, okay, those data will be affected to all the objects, okay, because they are static. Okay, we'll test it while we go into the coding. Next is about the access modifier in Java. We have public, private, protected. So as you can see here, there is restrictions. Private is red, right? Because they are not accessed by anyone else. Okay, only the class itself can use the private data. Therefore, protected and public, public, everyone can use it. So in terms of specifier in Java, you can look into two perspectives. Same package and different package. It means that you create class in different folder. Okay? Folder A, folder B, you create two class. When you say class, it means you create a class something, right? Subclass, it means that it involves with inheritance. Inheritance is you have class A already created, and then you create a new class B, and then this class B inherit from class A. Whatever inside class A, class B can use if they are set up public or protected, but not private. Private only itself. Okay, so as you can see, public here, yes, okay, it means that everything inside the class, yes, they can use. Private only itself it can use. Protected, if they are in the same package, okay, they can use that. Either it's the same class, different class, or subclass. However, if it is different package, those data that are set as protected, it can be used by subclass, okay? The child class of itself, it can use. However, for the class that are not subclass, that are not child of the class, we have parent class, we have child class, okay? Existing class and new class. Existing class is called parent class, new class is called child class. Because or we call none, we call subclass. Subclass is representing as child class, okay? So for the class that are not belong to its family, okay, no, cannot access in different package. However, in the default, yes, in different package it cannot be used, although it is subclass or not. Okay? So this is the difference. We will explore later. Maybe you don't get a real picture yet, but basically public and private, it's easy to remember. Okay, public everyone, private only itself that create as the private it can use. Okay? And here is the constructor. It is a special Java method. It's actually not a Java method, but it is used to initialize data when we create an object. How to create the constructor? We give it a name as the class name. As you can see here, we have two constructors, constructor 1, constructor 2 here. The name is the same to class. We call public class test. And we have public test, we have public test with parameter n. So it means that this is called constructors of our class. It does not have return type. Yeah? And the names of this is the same to the class name. This is called constructor. This is not a function. This is called constructor because the name is same to class and no return type. So you can create many constructors as you like. This is called like overloading, right? Overloading constructor. Constructor with no parameter. Constructor with one parameter. And when you access this data, okay, when you create an object, for example, in the main program, test t1 equal new, test t2 equal test 100. It means that you create a new object t1 and then you activate the constructor x equal 5. Okay, so it means that you don't do something, right? But the variable x set to be 5 because this is activated by the default constructor test here. And we have test 2 equal test 100. If we set this x data into n, okay, so when we create an object using this constructor with the parameter, it activates this constructor here that we create. Okay? So by default, if we don't create constructor, it has one constructor itself called the constructor with no parameter, something like this. We say something, okay, we have new keyword here as well, test 1 equal new, test 2 equal new, something here. So there is a misspelling here. There should be a new here, new here. So remember that if we don't create any constructor, it has one by default, which takes you to create a new object without passing the parameter. As you can see in the way you create some data in the past, that you create a new variable, let's say new object in here, you create something without call constructor. And here it also has constructor as well. This is constructor the student or string t that you create in the previous example. Public class student, it has one constructor. Okay, when you create object, you need to call the constructor. If you don't pass any parameter, it's not right. You cannot run it. Okay, I think it's too much. I think we come back to the test code a little bit. So this is the previous example. I will close this first. Then we go to the window, show apparent, okay, Explorer. Then we create class inside here. Okay, class inside here. Let's say the class is test with the employee, right? Employee. So the employee, it has some data, right? You can create as, let's say it has an ID. We have the name of the employee or whatever you can pass in here. And you have something, what we call functions. Let's say I create a function, public function to display data of this employee by using the system output line here. It has data of the employee, ID, name of the employee, so on and so forth. Okay, and we also can create a function, let's say public void insert data into the employee. I say I have the what we call ID. We have the named. Okay, I set ID equal to id, and then we set n name here equal to n, right? Okay, whatever. So this is the employee class where you create two functions, and you can also create the constructor by calling the same name as class name. This is called constructor. So we create a new class first to test this employee class. Okay, test employee. Okay. You can put any name, it's fine. Create a main function as well. So this is employee. I put employee here. Okay, I say E1 new employee. Okay, employee 2 equal new employee again. Let's say we also have employee number 3, new employee 3 here. Okay, and then we can access to the function that is available in this employee. Okay, so now I will expand this a little bit bigger, drag it to the right, make sure that we can see the line, vertical line here, the section separator. Okay, we can see this in the same view. So let's say access to the function insert data here, dot insert data. I pass certain data. We had it an ID and name, right? So one want the name of this employee. Let's say Mr. Sok. Okay, and then we have 2. Okay, employee number 2. Let's say 12. Mr. Sun and okay, one more. E3 we have let's say Sokha. Okay, so we can actually display this data when we want E1.display. We have the function. If I display this and I click run, yes, we got this data from E1, which is Sok. You can actually display other data. Say display. Okay, display function. Yes, this is for the second data because we call to the function of different object. Okay? So in here, if for example I type with a static keyword, I put static variable in here. Let's say static. I put what we call strings. Let's say department. Okay? Department. I put this as IT. So I set a default department for this variable. Okay, this is set as static, or you can don't put it. This is fine. Okay, so when display, I also display the department plus department. Okay. So it means that this is a static variable. If I activate it, for example, I don't change it yet, so we call these are IT. I also E3 dot display again. So we got the same data because here. So in here, if I modify something else, for example, in between here, after display this, I modify via E3 dot ID because it is not private. I can set it into something else. Let's say this is called the accounting. Okay. Accounting office. Okay, or accountant is fine. Okay. Okay, so there's something here that you can see. Multiple marker this line, which might cannot convert in something. Okay, because this is something we activate as department. I put ID is not right integer number. I put as string, so it gives me a warning message. So I modify the department. Okay, so in here, let's say I display some things. After we modify, so let's see what happened. If I activate this function display again one more time, so what happened? Okay. As you can see, I modify only the department of the E3 objects, but all the data of the other employee, they get affected, right? This is the department, they come to be a content as well. Okay. But if I put this as static, okay, I don't put this as static, you can see, yes, because we modify only the E3 object. only the E3 object that get affected into the different data, right? This is E1, E2, they get the same. This is the effect of static keyword. It's because static representing this variable is belong to all the objects. If we change any object, for example, this object change, E1 and E2 also get the effect number. Okay, the result is the same because this is static, belong to all objects. Okay. So in addition of this, okay, this is for employee test. We can test with the static keyword. We can also create a constructor as well from this class. Okay, we can create a constructor, and then when we create a new employee, we don't need to call to a function insert, for example. Okay, so let's say I create some constructor in here. Constructor mainly it has the name as the class name, so I put public employee with the return types. Okay, so this is one constructor. This is another constructor. You can create as many as you like. Okay, I have named. I have something else if I want to. Okay, depend on you. Okay, okay, public here. Okay. So let's say this one I don't do anything. This one I will set the data. Let's say ID equal to id, variable name equal to n, for example. Okay. So when we create this object, okay, this one can create because it activates this one number. Okay. I create two constructor now. Constructor. Constructor are used to create, initialize data when we create a new object. When we create object, this constructor is auto-activate. Okay. So by default, if we don't have any constructor, okay, use default one. But if we create one constructor at least, for example, I command this. I have only this constructor, so it means that I have one constructor myself that I create. There is no default constructor anymore. So as you can see here, this constructor is not found. It cannot create object because we don't find this constructor function. It's only available in here. Okay, but if I enable this, okay, it's fine. Okay, it's because now we define our own. It does not use default anymore. But if you don't have constructor, okay, it's fine. It has default one. Okay. So let's say I have this part and I can modify this a little bit with this constructor. Okay, I have two constructor here, so it still work fine. I create two more objects, new employee with the parameter say put fault data is Mr. Jack. We also have another what we call object number 5 E5 in here. Okay, I put the ID as well as the names. Okay. So this you don't need to call function insert anymore. You can activate this. Let's say E4.display, E5.display. Okay, right. Okay, you also display this at the end of the display after you modify this. As you can see here, this here work, right? You don't call the function insert anymore. But when you create, you use this constructor already. It will activate the constructor by pass this data into this variable when you create an object directly. But in this case, you just call this constructor without doing something because you don't take parameter. So it means that you need to insert yourself. If you don't insert, you cannot find data. Let's say suppose I command this. I don't have the function insert for object E1, E2, and E3. Yes, we don't have any data. Okay. The rule is that we don't set any data before we display. That's why these three objects, no data. Okay. While these two objects, E4 and E5, we can get the data. Okay. Because when we create object, we pass data to it. This is the difference. We use static as well as we use the constructor. Okay. So the key remember in here. By default, it has one constructor, but if you create it, it already override the existing one. It has no the default constructor anymore. Okay? For example, in here, we create one constructor, something wrong in here. It does not know the constructor anymore. Okay? But if you don't have any constructor, okay, this one is fine, okay, but this one is not found. We don't have this constructor with parameter. That's fine. Okay, enable it all to make it works. Okay, one by one, press Control and then symbol next to Shift question mark. You will get the command. So I think that's it for this video. Thank you for your attention. See you in the next